Hello, good afternoon. I want to
Good
assume that the
afternoon.
attendance. Great, great, great. That's good. All right. I just want to be sure that I'm being heard. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and want to welcome you all again to this monthly webinar that we usually have that is organized by Ubosele and Company. This is the third edition that we'll be having, and rightfully so, we are having it on a day that there's a holiday, and which makes it a lot more interesting. Once again, I want to welcome everyone, and I'm sure that we're in for a good time. I believe strongly that just like the previous edition had always um, made us better, I believe strongly that this will not be an exemption. So I want to welcome once again. Before I bring in the speaker and read review a bit of the information that we need to have before we start, I just want us to just get ourselves ready, relax, and be prepared for a good time. I said earlier on that we had two editions before now. The first edition we spoke on the impact of elections on real estate values, and this was anchored by no other person than Mr. Ineka Ele, who took us through that journey to make us realize what we should be. The elections, that was before the elections, and now that the elections are over, I'm sure that those messages can still resonate with us. And the second edition was taken by Mr. Chudi Ubosi. He talked on the key issues in real estate investment decisions, key issues. He took us through the journey of what are the things for those who want to invest in the real estate sector. What are the major considerations that we need to look into? And so I'm sure a whole lot of people have got feedback, and I'm sure a lot of people have gotten um, the slides and all that. So this afternoon, we'll be talking about another topic. But before I talk about the topic, it's important for me to mention that the person who will be speaking to us today is Mrs. Charity Epoba. Charity Epoba is a 2005 graduate of estate management. She has over a decade real estate sector experience. She's currently an associate partner with Ubosele and Company, and she's saddled with the responsibility of marketing real estate services, as well as ensuring that all valuations report from the company meets the professional standard, both locally and internationally. She's a multi-talented and purpose-driven valuation surveyor with proven records of producing timely and unparalleled results. She possesses over 10 years of uniformly blended high-quality work, experience in site inspections, property valuation, market updates, team leads, client servicing, quality supervisor, and expense control. Charity holds a Master of Business Administration from Lagudoke Akintola University of Technology, Ogbomoso. She is also an associate member of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers, a registered member of the Estate Surveyors and Valuers Registration Board of Nigeria. Charity Uba, as she's fondly called, has at different times attended various seminars and trainings programs on team building, effective services management, service delivery, and leadership. She's focused, self-motivated, highly reliable, and flexibly individual who also learn quickly. She's happily married with children. So Charity this afternoon will be talking to us on the topic, understanding the business environment for a successful real estate investment. I take that again, understanding the business environment for a successful real estate investment. And before I just ask her to commence immediately, for as many of us who already joined, should you have questions or contributions, the chat room is available. You can put in your questions. You can raise your hands. We can afford you the opportunity if you want to ask question directly, but right away you can begin to send in your questions. But much more, I believe strongly that you are in for a good time. So once again, I want to welcome Charity Epoba. Charity, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Sonjo, for this introduction. I'm a bit elevated. Thank you. And thank you for having me. As it were, you have already introduced what we're going to be discussing this afternoon. You know, the first time, this is our third edition of this. The first time that we're having such, we talked about impact of election on real estate value. And the second one, like you rightly said, was key issue in real estate investment. And we are the third edition, which we are going to be looking at this afternoon. We are going to be looking at understanding the business environment for a successful real estate investment. As it were, real estate investments is generally known or referred to land and permanent structure like homes or improvements attached to the land. Attached to the land, as it were, okay, whether natural or man-made. So in literary sense, real estate means real property. Real estate provides shelter as well as protection against adverse weather conditions. So real estate and land is very, very important part of factor of production, and as it were, it is one of the things that foster and sustain human existence. There are various reasons for undertaking real estate investment, aside merely, looking at shelter, as I rightly said earlier. A whole lot of things, a whole lot of reasons that makes people to go into real estate. And among them that we're going to be looking at is income. People go into real estate because of the income that is accruing from that sector of business. And apart from the income, and this income can be generated from rent. Apart from rent, it can also be an appreciation over time on property investments, which one had put in place over time. You know, this rent comes from property, residential property, as well as commercial properties, which one had, invested in. And secondly, real estate can also be seen as an edge against inflation. You know, when we talked about edge against inflation, it means it has an insulation against the effect of inflation. You know, as it were, the prices remain. In the face of the inflation, it is something that the core values of your property increase irrespective of the inflationary effect that is, in place at a particular time. And it has a potential to grow capital over time. Then real estate investment can also be seen, investing in real estate also helps in portfolio diversification. And when we talked about portfolio diversification, it is a kind of business that one can invest in aside what an investor is actually doing. Real estate is one of the business that you can use to consolidate wealth. It's for an investor, it can be used to amount wealth at every point in time. And the opportunity, it is only in real estate that this opportunity is available. Then if you also look at land banking means that in real estate, you can acquire a large portion of land, for instance, and to be disposed of or to be resell at a later date. And in so doing, you amass profit or wealth at the end of the day. So it is only in real estate that you can have a kind of investment that you can fall back at a later date. On that, the fact is that real estate is, even when we need to do that, real estate is also something that has its own challenges. In order for you to strive in that kind of business, there are things that you also need to abreast yourself with in order for you to make progress in real estate business. And number one of it is that there must be adequate skill. One must be knowledgeable in the business before dabbling into it. There is issue of talent. You must got the talent for you to weather through in the business. And another thing is that there should be an organizational skills as well as perseverance in carrying out all of this. And as a matter of fact, having knowledge and being educated about real estate market is essential to a successful real estate investment growth and business. Without doubt, Nigeria real estate industry is actually moving in an upward trajectory and is becoming far more viable investment for every upcomer that has the potential and the wherewithal to do the business. However, in order for us to go into real estate business, there are also things that are a lot of points that we need to enumerate on that will help us to navigate through all of this. If you want to invest a huge amount, because real estate investment is capital intensive, and in order for you to achieve your goals or the desired result at the end of the day, there are things that we need to put in place for us to achieve that. And what are the factors that we need to note to achieve all of this? First and foremost, like I said earlier, you need the skill. Aside the skill, what are other things that you also need to put in place in order for you to achieve this? You have to look at the land registration bureaucracy process in Nigeria. Topping the list, like I said, is land registration bureaucracy process in Nigeria. You know, Nigeria is among the worst globally that has the issue of registering, and this can even take up to 6 to a year trying to get your paperwork done. And that will also mean that you need to get all of this sorted out before entering into the business. And to be fair to an investor, if you don't get all of this in place, it becomes a problem. And the reason all of this bureaucracy is a problem is not far-fetched, is as a result of corruption at different levels. You know, for a file to get from one point to the other, from one office to another, it is usually a problem. So for an investor that wants to go into all of this, the lackadaisical attitude, first of all, will cause a delay. So if all of this is not well managed, it becomes a problem. And imagine if the funding for the project is being sourced from the bank, or you know, the investor would have incurred a huge interest on the loan for the development. So in order for us to get all of this, you have to get your paper, you start early and get all of this sorted out. And another thing that is next to that corruption issue is also lack of proper data management. You know, in Nigeria as it's well, I doubt if we have the record of everybody. If you go to the lands, in a proper economy is when all of this is in place. At a click of a button, every information is being displayed of a would-be investor. So all the information that is required for them to go ahead to sort all of this out, it is provided at a click of a button. So that will also reduce the delay that an investor will encounter during the process of getting his land registration done. And the second to that will have to be planning law, which means law regulating or otherwise relating to the use of land, as well as the construction thing to be used on land. The aim of this town planning really is to regulate and guide how how work is being done, and how the necessary things that need to be done for a proper and orderly manner, or a proper and orderly development and the settlement of the community within an urban setting. So one of the laws that we need to, you know, first of all, it has to be that you don't just construct a property. There are levels to which a particular structure can get to. And when approval is being given, you know, one of the reasons for collapsing recently that we have building collapsing recently that we have experienced in Lagos is actually as a result of these town planning laws, whereby if you don't go through with the required laws as to the number of floors to be built, it is also something that is worrisome. So the adequate planning has to be followed. Adequate construction laws have to be followed for a proper investment in real estate business. Sometimes this regulation of town planning authority might limit or permanently impede the desired construction by an investor, but then it is something that they need to put into consideration so that we don't have a chaos at the end of the day. It is also pertaining to the consideration of every of their investment has to, before you embark on any investment, it has to follow the planning law, the adequate planning law within the locality of the investment. Then next to that will have to be high cost of property development. Building a house is very expensive in Nigeria. Cost of construction, most of the time, it is even sourced internationally. And once it is like that, it is also a problem. And if you look at it, cost of construction is high for three major reasons. Number one is high cost of building material, which you have to source most of the time internationally. And the next to it, it has to be high skilled labor costs. You know, if you want to really, it's involved, if you are building an high-rise, for instance, it will involve you know, hiring the right professional to navigate through that. And number one, you get a structural engineers, you get a builder, a certified builder, and in all of that, all of these don't come cheap. So you need to also look at the cost, the high cost of labor, and also other costs associated with infrastructure, which includes road network, the sewage system. So all of this has to be looked at in order for us to, and if you look at this cost of construction, you find out that about 75% of our dwellers in Nigeria, we use urban dwellers in Nigeria. What we do, we build mainly on constructor. That means we have to use cement, and the price of cement is really not cheap compared to what we have in other neighboring countries. It's as high as 30 to 40% of the cost of what compared to what we have in other neighboring countries. So the lack of infrastructure had as much as 30% again, another 30% to the total cost of construction. If you have to build, you have to put all of these things. Imagine you having a mini estate or an estate, for instance, and you don't have a good road network to get to the place of your investment. That is also a problem. So all of this needs to put, all of this has to be considered or put in place for a would-be investor to be able to, have a good construction. Then another thing that a would-be investor also need to look at is actually the issue of this building collapses all around us. It is not something that is that we are not aware of. No, Nigeria as it were, we are blessed with everything, including our weather, unlike other cities or other parts of the world that they usually experience natural disaster like earthquake, tsunami, and tornado. But in Nigeria, there is nothing like that. In spite of that, we still have issues of us having buildings that are collapsed, that collapses from time to time. And this is not far-fetched. The reason for all of this is that it's actually man-made. The issue that we have is man-made, not natural disaster. And as a result of that, we make use, most of the contractors make use of, what they do is that they make use of an artisan that are not branded and no proper monitoring as a result of that. And a whole lot of time is also sheer negligence. We don't even prioritize the use of the right materials, right? The standard construction materials that needs to be used. So all of these form major culprit in this regard. So for us to dabble into a real estate investment, we also need to put all of this in the right perspective, prioritizing all the things that we need to do. We need to prioritize the material. We need to prioritize even the people that is going to do the job. I mean, the professionals that will be involved in the construction of the properties or building, as the case may be. The next to it, like I mentioned earlier, is actually lack of competence builder and contractors. It is more of what I can gain than doing the job. A whole lot of the contractors that we have here and there, what they do most of the time, it is, they play emphasis on the money and the initial mobilization fee of instead of getting the right workforce to execute the project and to get the work done. So they pay more emphasis. They are more tinted to getting, amassing profit than getting the right materials as well as the professional that will get the job done. Then another thing is the issue of funding. Nigeria possesses all other key factors in the real estate investments. We have all of that. Everything is in place, but somehow the funding is usually a challenge. And some of the, we have the right people that will even make the business to strive, which is a growing middle class. class population, growth in consumption, the need for people to own their own personal house, and also the rapid urban growth. And the right urban growth compared to some other matured economies in the world, funding had been an issue for a would-be investor. You will getting money, and that is not far-fetched as a result of underdevelopment and also, underfunding of our mortgage banks, and also the integrity of the investor. Sometimes they might approach the mortgage bank and they don't have adequate collateral adequate collateral for them to get the required funding for their project. So all of that is something that a would-be investor need to look into. Then second, next to that will be the issue of taxation. Before you have gotten a loan and you are paying an interest on that loan, before you know what is happening, the better part of the loan is being spent on taxation, is being spent on taxes and levies that will be, that you will be levied to be paid. And if you look at it, real estate investors are subject to a multiple taxation, and these taxes and levies are paid by them. And all of these include development levy, income tax, building approval tax, property tax, land use tax. And we also have cases whereby real estate investors are expected to pay renovation fee or cost of remodeling, fee on remodeling on an existing property. So all of this also impede or limits the level whereby an investor would have even want to go to. It limits the length to which an investor would have even want to extend it or our business to. And if you look at another aspect that we also need to look at critically, which is also, it is the issue of the valuation of Naira. You look at the loss in the value of our currency has also played a major role into cost of development. If you look at it, you want to buy a particular construction material today. The next thing, as a result of devaluation of Naira, our Naira worth less now. So it's just next to nothing. So it's also something that we also need to look at critically. Our purchasing power is next to nothing. So the cost of buying raw material, purchasing raw material, most of and other equipment that needs to be used will definitely increase the value of construction. So all of that add a role. As a result of this high cost of doing business, property developer that needs to make money will in turn transfer that burden to the general public that will be interested in the property, because they also need to make profits on their investment. So the effect of Naira devaluation, as if it were to be milder, and if it is milder, you discover that the cost of construction, of course, will be lesser, and it will not be a burden on both a would-be investor as well as a prospective owner or a acquirer of property. Then we also need to look at the issue of land grabbers. The issue of land grabbers, as it were, and is also popularly called Omonile issue, is something that we also need to look at. The their activities within our locality is a problem. It's actually a menace. And if you look at it, you want to invest or develop a particular environment, and before you know what is happening, they are there. You need to settle, you pay as you are paying for you will also pay them another developmental fee to them, because in some cases they call it deve, and if you don't give them, they will not allow you to go ahead to do whatever you need to do on your property. So, you know, it is something that is synonymous with virtually every locality within Nigeria. The land grabbers, they are there. Once you are there, they will come and they want to collect their own share. No, they also form part of those that will collect from your finances, the money that you have earmarked to develop or construct properties or buildings. They are there to collect it. And all these, their levy ranges from foundation levy, building levy, even erecting of fence. They are there at the point of even doing your NITEL. At NITEL level, they will come to also collect a levy. And oftentimes, most of these levies are not even received. They just come and they collect it. Or if you don't pay, they disturb the process of your project, which a whole lot of people are not interested in that. So all of this also increase the cost of construction. And apart from that, you are transporting your building material to site. You see them, they are also there to collect money for that. And all of this is enough reason to frustrate a would-be investor. All of this reason itemized on our slide is enough for them. As they are charging you, they also charge the artisan that is working for you. They collect money. As a matter of fact, they have association of all these artisans which they've communicated to. They come around to collect their own charges. So it is something that is frustrating. It frustrates the development process of an investor. Then another issue that we also need to look at is also the issue of liquidation. You know, sometimes one of the factors that motivates an investor is the ease of converting your investment to cash whenever the need arises. And when such is not readily available, it is also a challenge. You know, we all know that getting a property in the market, you know, getting it off the market, it requires a whole lot of marketing. And sometimes when we are doing all of this, it runs into months and sometimes into years. The money is tied down, you know, the fund is tied down. I will discuss some of the challenges, you know, bedeviling the real estate industry. Let's now beam our light on the key factors that an investor also needs to carefully consider when trying to, you know, when venturing into real estate investment. And the key issues that an investor also needs to consider when you need to go into investment. You all know that in our last edition, we talked about key issue that in real estate that we need to look at. And top of that was actually land, the property location. If property location is of most importance and continue to be the most valuable factor for profitability, whether we like it or not, if you are going to consider investing into real estate, it is not something that you just invest anyhow or in any location if you actually desire to get returns on your investment. So it is something that you need to consider the environment. And next to that, when you are considering the environment, you should also look at the infrastructure that is also available to that will enhance the value at the end of the day. You understand? And this, you have to look at its proximity to amenities, the green area, the serene view, and the neighborhood factors. All of these play a major role in residential property, for instance, all of this. And even to commercial property, you also need to know if it is sited within a locality that that desire the market for it. You don't just invest. So the location of your property determine how far you can get on your returns. Like they often say that location and price goes hand in hand. If a property is situated in a prime location or a prime area, it will certainly command a higher rent or a higher selling price compared to when you have it. It's just like you having an high-rise building in a place, in a village or a remote environment. What you get at the end of the day won't be something that will be commensurate to your investment. So one of the major thing that you need to look at has to be the location of the property if you actually want to break even. Then you also, another thing that I talked about is just for us, we are looking at the build versus buy. Something that we need to, the environment that you want to site your project, is it the type that people would prefer an existing property, or is it the one that you need to start building? Of course, you know that building. Okay. So, of course, you know that building and all of this, you need to consider that too. And in order for you to, for your investment to also strive, you need to also look at the issue of, you need to do the valuation, the valuation of the property, and get the valuable information that will guide your investment decision. Then also, what are your investment objectives? Are you just buying to live in? Are you just buying to live, to lease? Are you just buying to sell? You know, there are times that you sell for a short time. You just build and you get a return on your investment. And are you buying to sell, you know, or you are living for value appreciation in a later years, which is also a part of a retired, that can also be a form of a retired benefit. Then, in order, having noted all of the above, what are the things that you also need to look at? What are the laws governing real estate in Nigeria? We all know that the Land Use Act of 1978 actually placed the use of land in the hands of the government. And in order for you to acquire that, there are some things that you need to put in place. Acquisition of real estate land, there are things that you need to look at. So there are things that you need to look at in order for you to acquire property. You know, acquisition of real estate begins with pre-contract stage of carrying out your due diligence. You don't just buy without looking at, you know, carrying out the due diligence. And this due diligence include knowing the nature of the title that the vendor has. And it's also, you know, knowing the litigation, also know if there are litigation on the land. And also, you also need to know if there are other encumbrances that will make you not to invest on the property. What about the survey? You also need to look at the survey, and also check if the such property or land is not under government acquisition. So at this stage of land acquisition, it is advisable to engage the service of real estate professional before you can dabble into this, to get all of that sorted out. So in order for you to check all of this, there is need for you to visit the lands department, the Bureau of Land Department, to check all of this for us, for you to engage in real estate business. And apart from that, having done the right diligence, also know that you also require government's consent on the land, knowing fully well that the land use act has already placed the ownership of land in the hands of the government. So in every state, lands are being placed in the government of the state or at federal level. So you need to also get this governor's consent for you to transact on land at every point in time. And in doing that, you also need to do a stamp duty of that. You need to get a stamp duty. Having gotten the governor's consent, you need to do a stamp duty on the land. And this usually is meant to be carried out or done within 30 days of you getting the land. Then land document registration. Document registration, you ought to know, is another process of deed transfer. You need to also register your documents at the Land Bureau of every state. And this has to be done or executed within 60 days of you acquiring, because that will also give you ownership, legit ownership of the land. That will give you legit ownership of the land. In Lagos State, for instance, there are two things that you need to do when registering your property. One of them is deed of recording. This will make it public. For every, you will be able to determine if there are claims or anything on the land, and the claim, the ownership of the land, who had did that before the other person. And the second to that will also be that you are registering. Having done that, then title registration. So in your title registration, that is what make it more authentic that you are the owner of the property, and this gives you the legal interest on the land. So when land is registered in the register of title, it serves as a proof of title to the land. And if I must say to us, it is very, very, sometimes we don't like doing this, but it is something that is very key for you to navigate through every form of real estate investment. Get the right title, do the due diligence that you need to carry out for you to achieve the right objective on your land, so that there won't be a case of you walking and someone is coming. And most importantly, check that government acquisition. If you now build on a government acquisition, the bottom line is that the property will be demolished, and which will lead to you, permanent loss at the end of the day. So it is better we go through the right thing and get all of our perfection sorted out before investing in real estate business. Conclusion: if you look at real estate investment, is one of the leading area of investment that has contributed to the financial economy in Nigeria, which is the fact. It has contributed tremendously to financial status of Nigeria economy. So however, Nigeria real estate sector is still witnessing a lot of crises, which include fraudulent practices by land grabbers, breach of contract by real estate seller, sales of government acquired land, among others. Considering all this problem, the real estate buyers and investors are advised to retain the service of good real estate agents and experts to navigate through all of the above issues in order to have a robust return on their investments. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Charity. I mean, that was a handful of presentation. Thank you very much. I mean, you know, whilst I allow you to catch your breath for 2 or 3 minutes, I just want to do, I mean, I'll do a recap on what Charity had. Actually a wonderful presentation, and thank you so very much for that wealth of understanding and knowledge sharing. All right, so I'm sure I've seen one question. There's another question I have here, so I think we're currently about 2 questions. So I also want to encourage, because we have like I think we have about 10-12 minutes to wrap up. So 2 questions already. So if you have anybody who has any questions, please feel free to drop in your question. And if you want to, I mean, you can also raise your hand to ask. We can give 1 or 2 person the privilege to ask direct questions. So once again, thank you, Charity. So let me just use 3 minutes to do a bit of recap on what Charity, while she was making the presentation, I split it into 3 things that she actually discussed. Number 1, she was able to talk about the knowledge requirement for the investor, the would-be investor. Don't forget that we're looking, the topic she delved into was understanding the business environment for successful real estate investment. Okay, so she was able to talk about the knowledge requirement. And again, that speaks to the fact that this erroneous belief that people just think that you can just go into real estate. And like someone rightly said yesterday, the fact that you sell real estate or you market real estate does not make you a professional in real estate sector. So she was able to delve into the knowledge requirement for a would-be investor, talking about the skills, and that she talked about the skill. She talked about the use of the town planning law. I mean, in Nigeria, she talked about the challenges of getting difficulty. So, I mean, basically, what Charity was able to do with this is for a would-be investor to understand that, see, regardless of the money that you have that you probably want to throw around into real estate investment, you know, when she talked about real estate being hedged against inflation and all that. So people want to say, oh, instead of me putting my money into the bank and treasury bills and all that, I could put my money into real estate, which is good. But again, without the right knowledge, you just harm yourself. I mean, that's why she talked about the knowledge, bridging the knowledge gap, talking about the skills, right? So the second thing that Charity was able to also do was which item I noted it as consideration for investors, the consideration for investors. And I think this also was what Mr. Chidi also talked about a bit of this. In fact, the first thing that when she talked about the knowledge requirement, I think Mr. Eleto, in the first edition we had, there was one segment Mr. Michael did mention about local knowledge, right? And this is very key too. And so for the second aspect, which is the consideration for investor, which also I think Mr. Ubos also talked about some times ago too, is that there's a need for you to, Charity talked about location. She talked about, and in talking about location, and she also delved deeply into talking about, see, if you want to invest, there are a lot of challenges. You don't want to deal with the issue of Omonile, for example. So you must begin to look at, are you going to buy or you're going to build? If you are buying, it takes away some hassles from you, right? If you are building, it has its challenges. If you are buying, it also has its challenges. So she was able to pin this down to talk about the consideration for the investors, talking about location, talking about build versus buying, talking about valuation of property. Then she said something for me that was very key, and that was your investment objectives. Do you understand? What exactly do you want to achieve? You know, every investor must be able to ask these questions. Are you looking at short term? Are you looking at medium term? Are you looking at long term? So these are very key. And lastly, in terms of my own bringing what she did is she talked about the governing and legal consideration for investors, you know, so meaning that you must also have the understanding of the governing laws, the things that you should know in terms of each state in Nigeria, or probably Nigeria as a whole. She talks about the Land Use Act and all of those stuff. So in summary, the three things she talked about is, number one, has to do with the knowledge requirement for the investor. The second thing has to do with the consideration for the investors. And the third thing has to do with understanding of the governing and the legal consideration for an investor. So these three key things are things in Charity have put together for our understanding. And I think that if you are an investor on this platform here, I mean, you've just done yourself well by getting to have this understanding. And if you're also a professional here, these are things that you could also now take back to our investors in terms of advising them properly and this understanding. So once again, Charity, thank you so very much. That was very handful, and that was very insightful as well. Thank you so very much. So there are two questions. So I don't know if there's anyone who wants to ask question, but I mean raise hands to ask question directly. But if not, the first question here, Charity. Okay, I think I can see. Wow. Okay. There are three questions here already, but again, I think so that makes it for Charity. Are you good to take these questions now? The first question that this Charity is your speaker on now, so that we can. Okay, good, great. So the first question Kaluawa is asking is saying, and that has to do with your first segment of the presentation where you talked about real estate being an edge against inflation. He's asking that, please can you clarify how real estate investment can act as edge against inflation in a situation where a property investor has to pay more for replacement, repair of each housing unit due to inflation as we have it in the country today. Don't forget that in your presentation, you talked about inflation, you talked about exchange rate and all of that. Hello? Yeah. Can you hear me, Charity?
Sorry, I didn't get the question well. I want you to repeat it. Sorry.
I will repeat the question, but I think there's somebody trying to interrupt you on that end. The question this person asked is saying that you talked about real estate being an edge against inflation, right? But in our current state today in Nigeria, if you look at the cost of building materials, if you look at you talked about the value of Naira also the other time. So this person is asking and saying, if you have to pay more for the replacement and repair of each housing unit due to inflation, how then do we now say real estate can act as edge against inflation? Do you get that?
Okay. Thank you for the question, Kalu. The truth is that when we talked about is an edge against inflation, what is actually mean is that you have it, even if it is not appreciating, the prices still remains the same. The price remains the same. And over time, there will certainly be property appreciation, value appreciation on your investments. You understand? So no matter what, it is actually against inflation. When things goes up, it gets to a point that in other kind of business, after a while, you won't even be able to recoup your investment as to what you have put into it. But in real estate, at what case scenario, you get what you have put into it. And that's to say that, and it's often said that when you buy a land today and you are trying to dispose of the next day, you will certainly not sell the same amount. And that goes for whatever it is, the improvement on the land. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think that does it. I mean, that should because of our time, I'm sure. Let's take the other questions, please. Okay. The other question by Shegun Falibita says, despite the huge resources people put into real estate investment, how can the issues of high vacancy ratio be curtailed, especially in Ikoyi and Victoria Island areas, to enable investors recoup their money in good time? Charity, did you get that?
Yes, I do.
Good.
Thank you, Shegun. For this, my opinion, on that particular issue, I must tell you that in order for you for a will-be investor in those areas, I think we should learn to localize our own kind of business. You cannot be in Nigeria and you are using dollar. So I think that one of the reasons that you have high vacancy ratio within those neighborhoods is because in the first place, an investor is selling in dollars. Meanwhile, we are in Nigeria. We need to localize our own. Let's use more of our Naira. Because if we use our Naira, it will be better than using a foreign currency in Nigeria. I think that's one of the reasons we have that high rate of vacancy. And when we talked about, because of that dollar, it's unnecessarily increase the value or the rent for such properties.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think at some point there are a lot of questions here. Let me call, please, can the people at the back end bring Mr. Ele on to, so that we'll probably need your one or two. You can also want your wealth of knowledge too in one or two of the questions too. Please, if you can bring in on as one of the panelists. So Charity, whilst before Mr. Emeka makes one or two submission, I would want to, this other question is coming from an anonymous, right? You didn't put your name here. The anonymous is saying, thank you, ma, for this session. My question is coming from the trending acts of the money laundering, Yahoo, and the likes. He's saying, my question is, should the source of funds from a buyer or prospective tenant be put into consideration as an investor? How can I checkmate this as an investor? Lastly, does it really matter? Charity, should I take it again, or you get the question right now?
Yes, I got it.
You got okay.
Thank you, Mr. Anonymous, right, or Mrs. Anonymous. But I must tell you that the source of investments is very, very key. Considering the law of the land. If you are getting money for a Yahoo or a fraudster, for instance, for a property, there are limits to which you can deposit in your bank account. Otherwise, the EFCC comes after you. So that is very key. You don't collect money. You should determine the source of your clients, if they actually worth it.
Okay. So great. So let's there are other questions here. Oh my goodness, we are running out of time, but I think we need to take the questions. But okay, before I ask there, I think Mr. Michael is already on as a panelist. Mr. Ele, please, can you weigh into one or two of those questions in terms of what are your thoughts and your opinion regarding the Kogi axis and the issue of Yahoo that the issue of that question that Charity just answered now to Mr. Michael? Can we just get your opinion? Is Mr. Ele on?
Mr. Ele is in the panelist. You should be able to unmute.
Okay. Can you
hear me, Sonjo?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. You can hear you now. Yes, we can hear you.
If you don't mind, could you just refresh the question a little bit again so I can capture it very well?
Okay, so actually Charity had answered the question, but one of the questions says, despite the huge resources people put into real estate investment, how can the issues of high vacancy ratio be curtailed, especially in the Kogi and Victoria Island areas, to enable investors to recoup their money in good time? Talking about vacancy ratio in the Kogi and all that, and how it impacts investors in those areas.
Thank you very much. First, let me thank Charity for the very wonderful presentation. I mean, she was quite robust, and I'm sure we've all gained extensively from her presentation. Thank you so much, Charity. I also heard a bit of the answer she gave, and she did capture it with regards to whether you're investing in Naira or you're investing in dollars. But the key point I like to make is that real estate is part of the overall economy. I mean, it's not separate from the overall economy. Indeed, the real estate is a key component of the economy, as she pointed out in her own presentation. And therefore, when the economy is doing well, the sector is doing well. Or when the sector is not doing well, the economy is not doing well, as vice versa. If you check 3, 4, 5 years ago, when or under Obasanjo, maybe 8 years ago, when the economy was growing at 5, 10, 20%, all the houses in Ikoyi were taken up because there were people to take them up. When the economy depressed and got to the 2% growth or recessionary growth rate level, of course, if you look at the Ikoyi area, the expatriates had to leave, for instance. And of course, when they leave, the vacancy increases. It happens everywhere. I mean, globally, arising from the COVID pandemic, every urban city in the world suffered from vacancies. One, because arising from COVID, people moved from the cities to the suburbs. In Nigeria, for instance, arising from COVID, and of course, the economic issues that followed it, which we are still going through, a lot of expatriates left. And naturally, because they are the ones that occupy these high-end apartments and all that, people, the vacancy rate increased. But having said that, also, you must know that part of the point must be made that because a lot of those investments were done with equity capital, in quotes, people are not in a hurry. So the man who is asking for $50,000, even when he knows it's practically impossible to get it, it doesn't react very quickly. If he borrowed money to build a house, he wouldn't allow the vacancy rate to persist. He would rather just take what he can get and move on. But the level of equity investment in the areas you mentioned is quite high. I mean, people are investing with their personal money, however they got it. And therefore, they don't react to the market as they should. Whereas the man who borrowed money to build a block of flats in Ilubeju or anywhere else, if the vacancy rate he's going to have to adjust his rent instantly to be able to be getting income annually. So by and large, the issue of vacancy has to do with the economy. As the economy grows, you will see. Nobody will tell you. Once the economy can grow at 3, 4, 5%, those units are taken up. And of course, people have to become more realistic, like Charity said. The idea of insisting it must be this amount or this amount. The truth is that the real estate revolves around the market, the economy, and whatever rent you charge must relate to the market. You cannot say because you expected 10 million naira per annum that it must be 10 million naira per annum. Your rent has to be in line with what the market can take, and that's the reality we must all live with, including all the investors. Thank you so much, Sonjo.
All right, thank you so very much, Mr. Ele. We have actually run out of time. I mean, we can actually spare the other 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Charity, I think there are other 2 questions here. If we can quickly take them in good time. Of course, I mean, having all these questions just goes to shows that, I mean, people were really, really impressed with the presentation and of course, that actually dropped some impact on them. This question from the user of Redmi 9A says, are there any arrangements made by the practitioners in the real estate industry to curb the menace of the Omonile in property development? I mean, Charity, you did talk about Omonile the other time and all that. So are there arrangements, or what in weighing into this, what do you think, are there things that have been done, or what ways can this be sorted out?
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Sonjo. I must be frank with you. The issue of Omonile really is something that needs to be curbed by the government. I remember sometimes during Ambode government in Lagos State, to some barest minimum, the issue of Omonile was curbed. The idea of them coming around to demand for different kinds of levies were put at the barest minimum. And I also talked about in Edo State, the current governor, I remember there was a law to that effect. As we speak, currently there is no issue of Omonile in Edo State, and the reason being that there are laws in place. So what that now means that our government is the government needs to also help in this regard by putting the right laws in place that will curb the people in those localities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Charity. I mean, to add to that, you've captured that properly. But again, like the questionnaire I said, and Charity did answer. This is probably not in the hands of, as much as we can always talk about them, raise it in the front burner as practitioners, so that this comes to the hearing, and also for investors to know that this is what the challenge that they can have. And I believe that with presentations like this, with webinars like this, I mean, these are meant to let the government know that it's a challenge for investors and the need for them to nip it in the bud. And I mean, that's the part that we practitioners can play by escalating it as much as we can. And at the end of the day, it's in the hand of the government to ensure that laws are in place to ensure that it's completely just like Charity said, for example, that the indices she gave about Edo State now, saying that there's a law in place which also had. So, for example, you have investors who will be willing to, to do business in that area, knowing fully well that, they don't have the issues of money there. Charity, the last question here is on choice of location. You remember you talked about location when you talked about consideration, one of your areas talking about consideration for investment. You talk about location, build versus buying, valuation. Now, this person is asking, Atolagbe is asking, on the choice of location, it says, Ekpe is fast selling out now. Can you speak about it and factors that contributed to it? And the person is also thanking you for the presentation. Ekpe is a location that everybody is going to. So can you talk into this in terms of location? What are the factors that are contributing to the fact that people are going to this area? Charity.
Thank you. I must say that Ekpe is fast growing in terms of development. And the reason for that is actually, the urban, there's no way there will be an urban, the urban area is already congested and there is need for new area to be developed. So now the next available environment to the island is actually the Ekpe as is of it. And if you also look at the latest development along that corridor as to the Dangote refinery and the airport and some other things that is going to be there very soon, the Dangote refinery is almost at its full capacity, and there are other businesses along that axis. So that will also means that Ekpe that is the neighboring community will also develop along that line, because people will want to, they are working at Ibejuleki and they are living in Ekpe. So that is one of the reasons for Ekpe, the development that we are experiencing in Ekpe. And also people want to, if you cannot buy at the urban area, you can't buy within the VI and the Lekki axis. You can also move to Ekpe and get it sorted out. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, Charity, I think it's well captured. I think you've done that. Okay, Gibbons Oji is asking for the slide. We'll send it to you. For as many of you who ask for and drop your email, we'll send it to you. I mean, Charity had answered that question, and I think it's maybe what you've talked about it. There's nothing other than the fact that a lot of infrastructural development, a lot of things are coming the Ekpe axis. You've talked about the Dangote refinery. Yeah, I think there's the ports too, right? I think there's the Lekki port. Exactly. So so you can be sure that you can be sure that with all this that is coming on board or that is already there, no doubt that is the new destination for investment. And again, I think what I will probably want to say, and just like Charity had actually mentioned earlier, while she was giving when she was having a conclusion, she talked about the need for you to use professionals, right? Even as we talked about Ekpe being the next choice destination, doesn't mean that you can just venture into it. You must need the guidance of professionals will help you in such a way to be able to know where to place your investment. And that's the essence of this presentation at the end of the day, because talking about understanding, and I think that it's a good one. Thank you, Charity. I mean, for those who joined in late, we talked about understanding the business environment for a successful real estate investment. And this is the third edition organized by Ubosele and Company. And I'm sure another edition will be coming your way. We want you to please always be prepared to get the latest information, the latest understanding with regards to real estate investments and all of those. So I want to thank thank you all for joining, and for all of you who have dropped your email addresses. You can be sure that in a day or two, the slides will be sent to you. And also, if possible, I think those people at the back end will also work on you getting the presentation, the audio recording of the presentation. So once again, thank you, Charity, for this presentation, and we look forward to having you at some other time. Thank you for everyone who are on board this afternoon with us. We spent a little above 1 hour. Usually is 1 hour, but I know you can all say to the fact that it was a wonderful presentation, and as such, taking additional 10-15 minutes was not a waste of time. So at this juncture, I want to also thank everyone, and I want to say thank you all. And for our Muslim brother who will still find time to join us in spite of the holidays and the celebration, I want to say Barika de Salah, and wishing you a wonderful time as you celebrate with your family, and we say God bless you. So at this point, I want to bring this presentation to this webinar to a close, and looking forward to you to see you at some other time. I'm your host, Olusojo Fawole from Ubosele and Company as well. God bless you. So this webinar is brought to a close. Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you.